Toucan Arthur was always curious about new things. One day, while flying over the jungle, he saw a group of animals exchanging goods and services using colorful stones. So he contacted Fintech CTOs from fantastic companies all around the world and collaborated with them to learn all about finance. Inspired, Arthur asked INSART CEO Vasil to help start a podcast to share their knowledge with the world. This is what you are watching right now, Fintech CTO Podcast. Enjoy.
Hello, fintech leaders and builders. I'm Vasil from INSART, and today we have a great guest, Michael Blanton, founder and CTO from amazing company Xiggit.
Michael Blanton is a technology leader and AWS solutions architect who specializes in product development. He has an extensive experience working with different companies, such as Affirm as a partner engineering lead, Broadreach as senior solutions architect, Blink as the head of technology, and Xiggit as a technical co-founder and chief technology officer. Currently, Michael is building something new as a founding engineer, and pretty soon he's gonna unveil new products to the world.
I know that Michael has vast experience in financial software development in large corporations such as Visa, Affirm, PayPal, Broadreach, and also in smaller companies like Trustly, Bing, and Splitit. And in 2021, Michael decided to try himself in a new role as a technical co-founder of Xiggit. So, Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Michael, I have the very first question about, so why actually did you decide to start Xiggit after working so many years in corporate world?
Yeah, sure. So it was actually my co-founder and I and a third had this idea to provide affordable benefits to small businesses. And we came up with that idea because we all have family members that are either at retirement age or approaching retirement age and nowhere near ready to be able to retire financially because they've always worked for small businesses or they've had hourly jobs or they've bounced from job to job. And they didn't really have sufficient retirement benefits set up. So we started looking at how we could possibly solve this problem affordably, sort of disrupting the traditional 401k landscape that exists out there. Meanwhile, also providing for emergency savings, which a lot of these workers don't have, and financial planning and education as well to help them become more financially literate. So we started doing that. And then about the same time, a lot of the states started passing laws requiring that businesses with 5 or more employees start offering benefits, retirement benefits to their employees. So the stars all sort of aligned there from like a regulatory landscape. And then, so we started rolling out the product, built the product that has a Roth 401k component for retirement savings, which is perfect for an hourly worker, emergency savings, complementary financial planning. We have a third party that we partnered with to do that. And then we also built out a learn and earn game where people can come into the app and win their share of between $1 and $100 every day by answering 3 questions correctly. So we started with that in an attempt to help some of these hourly workers and smaller businesses be able to offer retirement benefits or just some form of benefits to their employees. Help their employees be happier and then also retain those employees. It was also about when the Great Resignation was starting. So we did that for a little while. Found out that selling to small businesses is really quite hard and started having conversations with a number of solo entrepreneurs and gig workers, specifically like Uber and Lyft drivers that found our platform organically and were looking for ways to save for retirement and just have like an emergency savings account. And one of the things that they mentioned was that their biggest pain point was actually saving for and calculating estimated taxes. The retirement and the savings and the health insurance is all really interesting as well. But their biggest pain point was saving for retirement. So a couple of months ago, we decided to shift focus from the small business space to the solo entrepreneur space. And we've been building out what we're calling personal payroll into the platform, which will allow those solo entrepreneurs to help calculate their estimated taxes that they would need to pay for their gig work, for their 1099 work, and then also be able to access some of the other services that we've offered, the health insurance and the savings and the retirement.
So I think that this is a really amazing idea for Xiggit to help small businesses and now like freelancers, gig workers, solo entrepreneurs, because when you have a big company and you have a team of accountants and financial planners and legal team in place, so you can do this easily. But when you're a solopreneur, so you don't have enough experience in that. So but you worked actually in bigger companies for years. Mm-hmm. And my question is, so what experience working in bigger companies helps you right now in your startup life?
Yeah, so it's really tied to, at least from the benefits space, we know what those large companies are providing. We know that those companies are doing 401k matching. We know that those companies are having those health insurance plans that they're either paying a portion, half, or all of, right? And being able to offer those employees. So we can then go and say to these smaller businesses and to these solo entrepreneurs, hey, you want to have the same benefits that you would get by working at this corporate company, this larger company. We can offer you those same benefits at a much lower rate than you might be able to get if you went and did them piecemeal in the open market. And so I think at least from a business standpoint, that's where we're leaning back on some of our corporate experience as we're going. But then a lot of it, at least especially as we're doing the actual building, when you're working for a large corporate company and you're building some technology thing or you're building some sort of a product, you have all of these processes in place that you wind up going through to be able to build that and make sure that the product that you build out is quality product. So we've been able to pull some of that experience in as well, and make sure that, we do a lot of design first thinking. We're doing a lot of QA before we're pushing stuff live, a lot of monitoring, and making sure that the customer is sort of first and foremost in our mind when we're building something, because those are the skills that we sort of learned when we were working at PayPal and Visa and some of the other ones.
Okay, yeah, so that's really great. So can you maybe name some of the specific example, of situation in the bigger company, that actually help you right now to build the greater product? So what exactly is that?
Yeah, sure. So like Visa specifically, we were part of the Visa Digital Group. It started off with V.me, which later became Visa Checkout, which later became Visa Digital, which is now sort of morphed into the tokenization space, the token payments space. A lot of what we were doing at the time was trying to figure out how can we use credit cards in a new and innovative way where a customer can shop online, feel safe and secure, and not have to worry about putting their credit card into a website or an app, and potentially have that app or website be breached and their credit card exposed. So a couple of things we were working at was like, okay, well, let's go. One of the conversations that I remember vividly is we were talking to one of these TV shopping channels where you could, buy whatever they were selling at the time you were watching the television. They wanted to be able to set it up and say like, okay, well, you're watching a TV show, you're watching Friends, and you wanted to be able to buy a Rachel sweater. And so you could have your phone while you're watching your television, and then in the app, it would say, do you want to buy Rachel's sweater? And you hit yes, right? And so in there, we're connecting a TV show that may or may not be live. It's probably recorded at some point and being broadcast at a later time. Connecting that to a device that you've got in your hand, your phone, and then also connecting that into a website platform, which was this TV channel that was selling the stuff. So then the idea is they would use Visa Checkout, which was securely storing your credit card on your phone, to securely purchase that product with that TV channel, and being able to give them be able to have that person be able to buy that outfit that the person was wearing in the show. Completely new and innovative thinking at the time. It's probably pretty mainstream right now with everything that they've gotten, like YouTube and Twitch and some of the other stuff where you can just buy stuff directly. But at the time, nobody had thought of it. And so those are some of the things that we were sort of thinking about, new and innovative ways to be able to solve sort of what seemed to be common problems. Sort of taking that now to how can we find new and innovative ways to be able to provide some of these neglected employees with a way to be able to get benefits, so that small business or that solo entrepreneur is not paying thousands of dollars a month to be able to get some of these benefits. How can we streamline it from a technology and a product and a partnership perspective? How can we streamline it and think of new and innovative ways to be able to offer the same things that they may be getting through a larger corporate employer, and be able to take advantage of those themselves.
So, Michael, it looks like you, as many entrepreneurs, wearing several hats at the moment. So you're involved in partnership development. You also do the technical job. Looks like you're significantly involved, like in product management. So actually, what are these hats for yourself? What are the major hats that you have right now?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's just about everything. A lot of my day-to-day job is actually building. So it's figuring out what the clients want. How do we translate that into something that they can actually use, and then going ahead and executing that. We're doing all the development in-house. We haven't outsourced any of that. There's also managing those business relationships. So, we're not building everything in-house ourselves. We've defined what our sort of core strengths are and what our core platform should be able to offer. Everything else we've decided that we're going to outsource. So you've got things like tokenization, you've got things like connecting to bank account providers, connecting to KYC vendors. So all of those partnerships we're sort of looking for, trying to figure out who we want to be using from there. Managing all those budgets, managing all those payments, even digging into some of the financial stuff and some of the financial operations things where we're looking at how much money we have in the bank, how much money we have going in, how much money we have coming out, doing all that sort of stuff. And then even down to like managing the website, right? We've got the website that we've put together, making tweaks on that as we add and remove features from the product or get feedback or try different aspects of messaging on the website. Basically just a little bit of everything.
So based on that, so what's the most like in what part you have more patience? What is more interesting for yourself, like to manage the team, to talk to clients and identify their pain points, or build the partnerships, or work on the product management and product roadmap development? So, or maybe architecture design. So what is the biggest patient for yourself?
Yeah, so when I sit down and think about where I personally can provide most value at this point in the juncture, it's building the product that will generate the revenue, right? And so my partner can go out and have all the sales conversations with the clients that want to be able to use it, get their feedback on it, determine what we want to be building next, find that new business. And then once we define all of that, what we need to be building, then, I really enjoy going back and figuring out, okay, is this something that we want to build ourselves? Is it something that we can outsource? Is there another vendor that is doing this cheaply enough that we can then weave into the platform? I've been doing that now for a couple of years here as we've been sort of building it out. But when I sit down and look at what my day-to-day work is, I think that's really how do we build the product so that we can generate the most revenue possible.
All right. So is it your like a key focus for the whole company? Like what is the revenue generating features that you can develop? So can you tell us a little bit more what is the approach here? So how you define the priorities and how you understand that, this particular functionality, building this particular functionality will bring you additional revenue, or like the maximum amount of additional value in the certain amount of time. So how do you prioritize?
Yeah, so it's a combination of identifying sort of the low-hanging fruit. There may be some things that we can do quickly and easily that we can stand up that may move the needle a little bit, while we sit back and focus and do a little bit more research on some of the larger items. And so if you look at the history of sort of what we were building, we started off with emergency savings. We were out talking to a bunch of small businesses and saying, hey, what if we gave your employees a way to save for retirement? You could give them a Roth IRA, which at their income levels is perfectly fine. They don't need a big old expensive 401k. They own it. So when they leave, because let's be honest, all these employees sort of leave, they rotate through these jobs quite quickly and quite often. They can take it with them. They don't have to roll it over, and there's not a lot of expense for them to be able to keep it. And then they can just continue contributing to it. So as we started talking to these guys about how do we do that, we stood up just the emergency savings by itself, because it was relatively easy. Be able to update contributions in a payroll check. That was relatively easy to do. And then collect all that money into the bank accounts that we have set up to manage these savings contributions. So we started off with that. And then we realized, okay, well, in order to do the retirement successfully, we need to go out and get licensing to be able to do that. So my partner, Carmela, became a registered investment advisor while we were trying to figure out what this 401k offering sort of thing was going to be. So she was getting that certification while I was looking for vendors and broker dealers that would be able to help us stand up this 401k. We then found one. And then once we had the licensing together, we launched that and then updated everybody to say, okay, well, now a portion of your money is going to go into your savings account and a portion of your money is going to go into your retirement. So we did that. And then as we were having those conversations with those employers, they said, well, the retirement's great, but we also need health insurance. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we offer health insurance? So sit back and look at, what do we need to do to be able to do that? And again, it was licensing. So because my partner Carmela got the registered investment advisor's license, I went and got the health insurance licensing so that we could start selling health insurance policies. So we started with, and then the question was, okay, well, how can we easily sell health insurance policies? Well, then the government already has the health exchange marketplace, which sells both individual and small business plans. And we could just do it from there relatively easily. And we can set it up so that initial purchase process may be quite manual, but we're doing so few of them right now that that's perfectly fine. Right. So went and got the health insurance licensing, added some marketing language to the app and to the website, and put together a really simple flow to be able to sell those policies, get what information we needed to be able to sell those, and then manually sell those, while we're looking for partners and funding to be able to do something that is much more integrated, something that you might see more at a corporate level, where you get the notification that you've got health insurance, you go to a website or you go to an app, you put in your information, and it's all automatically updated. That's the ultimate end goal. We're not there yet, but that's what we're sort of working towards. And then on this personal payroll thing, that's sort of the next big rock that we've been working on for the past, I don't know, a couple of months or so. For these solo entrepreneurs, it's like, okay, well, how can we get some quick wins on that just to make sure that we're on the right path? So starting off with, let's look at all of the users' deposits into their bank account. Are we collecting all of the deposits that we need to be collecting? Or are we missing some for some reason? Is the data that we're getting not quite complete or not quite accurate? Then being able to, okay, once you've identified which of these are business income versus not business income, which of these, how does that group into maybe a quarterly view, right? How much are you making every quarter? And then finally estimating the tax payments that you would have to build on that, right? So building out in little incremental steps so that we can see value and start getting people engaged with the platform and seeing value in the platform. And then start getting their feedback on, hey, how much would you be willing to pay for something like this before we actually have our final product and sort of push it out. That's what been it's typically how we've been approaching everything that we've been building out at this point.
So let's recap a little bit. So you're focused on, initially on providing the employee benefits to small businesses, and Xiggit is able to quickly set up small business and start providing these employee benefits. So now you focused on retirements, on setting the retirements plans for solopreneurs. So if we can summarize, so what is the biggest pain point right now that Xiggit can solve to its clients?
Being able to get the retirement that their employees may need at an affordable rate. And then that's the first one. And then the second one, once it's live, the personal payroll piece of it that we're billing, we believe really will be the biggest pain point solver for some of these solo entrepreneurs. Some of the conversations we've had with them, one of our users, for example, was a solo entrepreneur and didn't pay their estimated taxes properly and had to wind up shutting down their solo entrepreneur business because their tax bill was so large. And they couldn't quite figure it out. And they actually came to us at one point and said, hey, if I had known you guys were building this out, maybe I would have left it open and tried to figure it out from there. But we've gotten that feedback from a number of these small solo entrepreneurs that the tax piece of it is by far the biggest problem that they've got.
All right. So this is a really great pain point because, tax, you need to have everything right with your taxes. And sometimes it's time consuming to do this right, and for affordable prices for the solopreneurs, actually.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit on technical side. So the interesting thing that I have noticed that in one of your articles on Medium, you actually mentioned that you build the application passwordless, and also as I see, you're a believer in serverless architecture. Mm-hmm. So it looks like all this passwordless, serverless architecture design. So what is behind that? So why are you focusing on that kind of solution development approach?
Yeah. So the passwordless thing is really interesting. I'm a huge believer in password managers. My family always gives me a hard time because I don't know any of the passwords to any of the sites that I have accounts on. It's all in my password manager, and those passwords are incredibly complicated versus like my mom, where like we had to access some of her accounts at one point, and she uses the same password everywhere, and it's a really simple password, right? And so it's like, that's, as we're building this product out, that's the type of user that we're targeting, right? They're not internet savvy. A lot of them have a couple of apps on their phone that they're primarily using. They are the ones that their Facebook accounts get hacked all the time, or their email gets hacked all the time because they don't have the discipline enough to not click the links. They're like, oh, this looks interesting, click, and then they're hacked. So it's like, okay, well, how can we prevent these users from having to remember yet another password, or have an account with the same password that they're probably using at 6 or 7 different other places, and keep their assets as safe as possible? And so I thought back in my experience at a firm, and they have a similar, or at least they had, I don't know if it's still true, but they had a similar authentication mechanism where it would just be your phone number. You put in your phone number, they send you a PIN, and then you put in the PIN, and then you're in your account. It's like, okay, well, that to me was really, really efficient. And so when we started out, we were like, okay, well, let's put Facebook authentication in there, or let's put Google authentication in there. And it's like, no, the simplest thing to do right now is just put in a phone number and it sends you a PIN. We did learn some on that. Again, these users that we've got are not sort of that internet savvy group. So there was some sort of an education component to kind of get them over the hump. But I think now, even now in the past year or so, there's been enough changes, in place where we're not having as much like, how the heck do I sign into my app sort of questions coming in as we at one point had. And then quickly added on top of that the bio authentication into the app. So once you sign in the one time, that's good for probably 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever it is. And you can use Face ID or Touch ID on your Android or your Google device to be able to sign in to the app to make it a little bit easier, right? So we wound up adding that. So that's kind of where we start with the passwordless piece of it. I'm a huge believer in that. And then like passkeys are coming out now too, which may be an interesting thing for us to take a look at as well. So that's on the passwordless side. On the serverless side, when you're building a company and you're a startup, and we look at our usage pattern even now, we've got people maybe in the app, maybe an hour a day, right? They're coming in, they're checking their balances, and they're exiting. Everybody's in there for probably 5 or 10 minutes at the most. Why do we need to pay for a bunch of servers that are sitting there idle waiting to serve content when they're going to be sitting there idle for 23 hours a day, right? So then it's like, okay, well, some of the serverless stuff, we can host all of this business logic on the back end that's behind an API gateway on Amazon and powered by Lambdas and connecting into databases that don't reside. It may take a few minutes, or it may take a second or so for that to sort of warm up once it's hit. But at this point in time, that delay is better than having us waste a bunch of money on a bunch of servers that are sitting idle for a majority of the day. And then as we started digging into it further, it's like, okay, well, we can simulate cron jobs. We can simulate batch jobs. We can, we have this API gateway. We can have services talking to each other, even across accounts, without actually having any servers in it at all. And I'm fully confident that at some point we will get to the point where the amount of money that we're spending on compute in Amazon with our Lambdas and whatnot would then exceed if we moved it to containers or if we moved it to EC2 servers or whatever. And at some point we will have to make that migration, but for right now, we're perfectly fine with running it serverless.
So I personally believe that passwordless solution is the some kind of future for lots of cybersecurity systems, because you just get rid of this password factor,
right?
And you don't need to protect anymore this factor, and you just rely on some other factors that are hardly replicable. So I think this is really great that you actually implemented this feature in your application. So speaking about the team, you have mentioned. So with the on the technology side, so you implement the serverless architecture, to save costs on the cloud spending. Speaking about team, on early stage of any startup, you need to be very cautious, who you hire, and not to hire too many people at start. From the other side, you do need to have a core team in place so that you can move forward and grow. So how your current team looks like? So what are the structures? So you mentioned you have a co-founder, a partner, and also you have some job outsourced. So can you tell us a little bit more how you structure the team to be efficient and move forward?
Yeah, sure. So it's my co-founder and I right now are pretty much doing just about everything. We've had interns come in over the summer. I'm a huge believer in interns as well. That's another one of the things that I love. We've had a couple of interns come in over a couple of summers to help build some of our core product out, and help, scale our development for a couple of months. We've had a couple of people coming in to help with sales and marketing, sort of as an as needed basis. We've got a sales consultant that's working with us right now as we start to tackle this solo entrepreneur space, looking for business development partners that may be able to help us access some of those larger gig worker employers. Like not necessarily the Ubers, but some of the smaller Uber competitors that are starting to come up now, or like the TaskRabbit type companies where they have a bunch of contractors that they just refer business to, or like the Upworks and the Gurus of the world and stuff like that. So we've got a sales consultant that's helping us sort of tackle that market and get in touch with some of those companies. The other thing that we found fairly early on, especially in the small business space, the employers that we were talking to, a lot of their employees are not native English speakers. So there's most of them can read Spanish. A lot of them speak Spanish, but not all of them can read Spanish. So we have a translator that we tap in from time to time to help us translate the content. And now the basic policy is every time we write content going forward, it's in English and in Spanish. So on top of using like Google Translate as needed and stuff like that, we have this other person that we can tap into doing some translations as well. And that's really sort of the team that we've got. We started off, we had those couple of interns coming in to help us like on the technology side, but now the focus has really been on sales to help drive sales, because we can build all the technology we want, but if we don't have people coming in to actually use it, it doesn't do us any good. So that's kind of where we're focusing on the sales and marketing at this point.
Yeah, so I think it's a really smart step to hire interns. So in our company, INSART, we also like to have a pool of really great intern talents, so that we can develop them furthermore into more senior roles going forward. And also we have found that interns, they are young enough, but they're very energetic and they're very proactive, because they still, they want to learn, okay, and they can deliver really interesting solutions, like innovative solutions, even not having like lots of experience, but with this will of learning new stuff, they come up with some really brilliant ideas how to move forward.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. And you also mentioned that, as I understood, on the business development side, you rely on the partnerships. Is it correct?
Yep. That's where we're targeting right now, is build out as many of those partnerships as possible.
Can you tell us a little bit more? What's your experience here? Because, for the early stage companies, when they start, again, you can't hire a big sales team who will actually drive all the opportunities and all the new business. So that's why you need to be, I say like lean here, and rely on the partnerships. It's a great idea. So, but what's your best practices getting really great partners?
Yeah, and so it's been a matter of finding those partners, and especially those startup partners, right? And we're kind of all in this boat together. And so if you find somebody that has classified themselves as a startup themselves, they're more likely to then come in and sort of help you out. We have talked to Uber in the past, and the feedback we got from Uber was, the first question they asked was, well, can you handle our scale? Right. And so that's where their concern's coming in. You're small, you don't have a lot of traffic coming through. How can we prove that to them? We can't. We can say, well, we've built it on Amazon. We believe that it's can scale to what you guys would need. But, without having some sort of proof to be able to back it up, they wouldn't even be willing to sort of test it out in one of their smaller markets. So then it's like, okay, well, let's go find some of these new players that are coming into the market that are hiring these workers, the DoorDash competitors, the Uber competitors, the gurus of the world. We're on an Amazon technology Slack channel with a bunch of CTOs, and it's like, okay, well, all these guys that are building out companies to facilitate contract work, how can we work with you to offer our benefits to your contractors? We've done a lot of research on if you have a contract worker and they're working through a specific platform and that platform is offering them benefits that they don't ordinarily have, right? We believe that worker is more likely to stick with that platform than to kind of go to somebody else that isn't, right? So it's a win-win for both. So now it's a matter of finding those types of companies that are targeting to those workers that we're looking at. And so it's a lot of going to conferences, going to hanging out in these Slack channels. A lot of venture firms now are building out Slack channels where potential investment opportunities can come in and, chat with others. And there's a couple of different ones that we're in, sort of watching, creating a lot of blog content, sharing that and seeing what sort of feedback we're getting. So it's kind of been the strategy, at least for the past couple of months, and we'll see how well it goes, I guess, within the next month or so.
So it's great when you have initial clients and you have partners and you can get all the feedback from them and analyze it and actually to define what will be your next steps. And you mentioned that you have done this pivot from targeting small businesses to serving contractors and gig workers. And my question is, was it like a kind of feedback from your clients or from your partners, or how did you come up to the idea that you actually need to do this pivot?
It's a hypothesis right now, I think, more than anything. The sales on the small business side, it's interesting because everyone that we talked to, they were really interested in being able to offer this to their employees. Very few of them actually wound up pulling the trigger on signing up and enrolling. So we were running into two problems. One, not knowing how to find them, how to find those small businesses. We actually have a partnership with Chase Bank in Northern California, where they are offering Xiggit as a benefit provider to their small business clients.
Okay.
But that's like we have a flyer in the pamphlet that you get when you sign up for a new banking account at the Chase branch, right? Okay. And so it's like, okay, well, how do we go and track down those particular small businesses? Actually, last Friday, we went to a small business expo here in San Francisco that had thousands of small businesses coming through and listening to sessions, and we had a booth there. And so, it'll be interesting to see. We got a couple hundred contacts out of that. It'll be interesting to see how well that actually works for us. It's another hypothesis on the small business side, at least, that these conferences might be an interesting place to go. We've talked about going out to Chamber of Commerce, right? Local Chamber of Commerce, and be able to pitch and give our little spiel. But once we find them, have the conversations with them. Yes, they're interested, but then actually getting them to sign up. It's like, okay, well, how do we get them over that final hurdle? We've tried to make it as simple as possible. It takes them 10 minutes to register. They put in a couple of information. But again, I think it's that we're new and they don't necessarily quite trust us entirely to be able to do it. I think that's sort of what's providing that hesitation. So then we've been figuring out, okay, well, some of the contractors, some of the gig workers, go and literally, like, I think my co-founder and our sales consultant went down to like San Jose airport one afternoon and just were like handing out cards to Uber drivers and having conversations with them about like what their pain points were while the Uber drivers were waiting to pick up their rides, right? And so it's like literally just feet on the street trying to figure out how to get those people in. And there, the barrier to entry is a little bit less right? All they have to do at that point is download the app. And then now it's like, okay, well, then how do we get them to activate within the app, right? So they've downloaded the app, they've come in, they've signed up. How do we then get them to use our personal payroll product or start saving for retirement, right? The other thing we've learned is email and text conversations aren't really effective. A lot of people aren't reading the emails that we're sending, not necessarily paying to the text messages. So a lot of it is going to be, I think, what we're going to wind up working on the next few months is how do we crack that communication problem that we've got, and get people to see those, and get people to take action sort of on that. I think that'll be the biggest challenge I think that we've got to fix going forward.
So to my opinion, it looks like just different models. When you sell to small business, it's still B2B. Yeah, so you need to talk to decision makers, but it's still B2B. When you sell to contractors and gig workers, it looks like it's more B2B, a B2C solution and B2C selling rather than B2B, because this is a single person who will need to do the decision, to make the decision whether to actually start using your application, and download your application in the first place. So it looks like just different models how you would like to sell, whether you would like to sell through the B2B approach or through the B2C approach.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually for us, it's on the business side, it's B2B to C, because we have to sell to the employer and say, hey, your employees want this. Why don't you come sign up? And then they sign up. But then and on the business side, it's an opt-out program. So if you come in as an employee, we automatically enroll you after 30 days unless you come in and actually tell us you don't want to participate. So then it's a B2B to C play, because then we have to convince those people that we've signed up that they want to stay. Okay. And that for us, pulling that $5 for every $100 they're earning out of their paycheck is a good thing. And why do they want to save in retirement? And why do they want to save for emergency savings, right? And so it's very much a similar conversations that we're having on the individual side, but it is very much for us a B2B to C play.
So what do you think will be the next major feature that you would like to release?
So it's definitely it's definitely this, what we're calling personal payroll. It's targeted at the gig workers. The initial version of that is going to be helping them understand their income, estimate those personal taxes, and then eventually facilitate paying those taxes for them. And ideally, at the end of the day, somebody's got, $5,000 a month coming in. We're going to save some percentage of that off into one of these savings vehicles that we've got to pay those taxes, and then automatically remit those taxes so that gig worker doesn't even have to think about it. That's like our dream end state. We're probably a few months away from being able to get there, but I think we'll be able to get there eventually. The other things that we've wanted to be able to do as part of that is to be able to allow those gig workers to save for paid time off, right? So traditionally, when a gig worker wants to go on vacation, they're not going to have income for that week or 2 weeks or month or whatever it is they want to take off. So why can't they also then take a portion of their paycheck and set it aside so that when they do take time off, they can start getting some of that income even when they're not actually working? And then the third aspect of it is flattening out their income stream. And so what we've seen from some of the conversations that we've had is that user or that worker may have $5,000 come in August, and $3,000 come in September, and $4,000 come in October. How can we flatten that out so that they get more of a constant income stream throughout the year? And it'll take a lot of financial setup at the beginning. Like you'll have to fund into this sort of account. Yes. But then you'll say, okay, well, I need to have $4,500 a month coming in every month. And then we'll be able to know, okay, right now they're at $4,000. We need to pull $500 out of this other account and send it to their, whatever their income account is that they're paying for stuff out of, so that they have that $4,500, right? And so that's That's like the third phase of it, and that's probably a next year thing for us. But yeah, that's like the biggest next chunk that I think we're going to be working on based on conversations we've been having with some of these gig workers.
So do you think you will need to do any kind of third-party integrations to implement this personal payroll, and what are they?
Yeah, definitely. The biggest thing, well, so there's two of them. One, and we've been looking for this for a while now, and unfortunately, it all comes down to like an investment sort of thing. It's a huge financial investment. We need an FBO, a banking provider, right? So we almost become a neobank at that point,
Okay.
so that users can have a savings account within our platform that is in their name. It has a bank account and routing number attached to it, so it looks and smells like a bank account, and maybe even has a debit card attached to it, whether it's a physical debit card or a digital debit card, to be able to facilitate them, especially like on the taxes piece of it, right? There needs to be a bank account for the government to pull the money out of. That's one of the financial partnerships that we're going to be looking at. There's a number of vendors out there that we've talked to that do that. And a lot of it, especially now that the market is kind of where it's at, the stock market and the financial market and everything is where it's at. They require large amounts of capital in the bank for us to be able to do those sort of partnerships, and they have large monthly minimums that we need to be able to meet. So it's a matter of finding the right partner that'll help us be able to do that, and sort of meet us where we're at with all that piece of it. That's the one thing. And then the other piece of it is we've already got the integration, but to be able to pull those transactions in, analyze those transactions, and determine which of them may be taxable income and which of them may be not. It may be a combination of machine learning type stuff and partnerships. You know, Plaid has a lot of the data. There's some other vendors that are coming up with some of the data, or being able to massage some of that data to be able to make it more user-friendly and be able to do some analysis on it for us. And so we're either looking at partnerships to be able to build some of that stuff out.
So are you talking about like transactions analysis?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like Plaid does a really good job of it right now. When they pull in a transaction, if there's the word payroll in it, they classify it as a payroll transaction, which is great. But what if you get paid by a company through Zelle, right? And so, and some of those companies may be hiring multiple contractors, right? And so if I have a Zelle transaction with a specific descriptor and you have a Zelle transaction with a specific descriptor, and I automatically come in and say, oh, that's a business transaction, it's taxable, I want estimated taxes pulled out of it. How can we then automatically suggest that when you see that same transaction, it automatically suggests for you, oh, this should be taxable, do you want to mark it as taxable, right? And so it's either do we build our own ML to be able to determine some of that stuff, or is there a third party out there that we can use to be able to handle some of that logic? That's some of the stuff that's probably in the midterm of our radar to be able to find somebody like that.
So you mentioned actually that this would be the huge investment for yourself. So how do you do on the investment side? So are you self-invested? Are you already the profitable company and organically growing? So what's your strategy?
Yeah, so we're
fundraising for yourself.
We're definitely pre-revenue at this point. We did our pilot with our small businesses as we were sort of learning there and sort of cutting our teeth on whether or not the technology actually worked. There's a little bit of income coming in from that, but it's not much. We did a crowdfunding round last year, which was really interesting. One of our hypotheses was, because we are small businesses, allow some of those business owners to come in and invest in the company. And a couple of our business owners did invest, and then we wound up having a couple of other investors that came in and then became clients. So we did a crowdfunding round there. In the past couple of months, we have been actively fundraising, trying to find those angels that might want to help us build out. And so we're kind of doing just rolling investing, targeting as many angels as we can but still, while we're building the traction that some of the smaller VCs may be looking for, or some of the bigger angels may be looking for, to be able to get some of that traction so that we can go back to them and say, hey, look, now that we're looking at this gig worker, solo entrepreneur market, we've got all these people that want to come in and help us build out this personal payroll product, give us feedback on it. And oh, by the way, they are paying customers of ours already. So that's kind of what we've been working on, at least from the fundraising standpoint, over the past couple of months. But we are actively fundraising right now. Yeah.
So typically there are a couple of like two major approaches for the fundraising. So the one that I've seen is when the company define in full their go-to-market strategy, with all the pitch decks in place, with the business plan, and then they try to systematically approach, the specific investors, like angel investors or maybe early venture capital funds. So the other way is like when you just ad hoc talk to some investors and try to get the attention. So what would be your advice, maybe based on your experience, for the early stage founders, whether you need to develop this pitch deck, business plan, or it will change all the time? So what do you think?
Yeah, so it's interesting. From the companies that we've seen that are raising, it seems to be very much a who sort of thing. The folks that I've seen, at least the small startups that are pre-seed, the people that are successfully investing have had companies before and have had a Rolodex that they can call. If you're just starting up, we've done a couple of different accelerators now that have introduced us to some investors. We have a pitch deck. We publish the pitch deck. We have a slew of sales emails that we send out to angel lists that we put together ourselves to attempt to do that. But I guess my biggest advice would be to build your network as big as possible, because at least the conversations that I've had and the stuff that I believe from what I've heard is, at least in the pre-seed stage and maybe even in the seed stage, they are investing on your ability to deliver on the product, not necessarily on what your roadmap is or what your financial model is or any of that sort of stuff, because at this stage you just don't know. You're guessing. And so they're investing on your ability to deliver on what you say you can deliver on. So show how you've been delivering on what you say you can deliver on, and that'll help, I think, open up some of those conversations.
So look, when companies post revenue and when you have this, proved metrics, and you have the positive net profit, you're growing. So actually, it's easier for investors to make the decision whether they want to invest into these numbers or do not want to invest. But when you are a pre-revenue company, so you need to convince the investors somehow to believe that you will grow. Yep. So what do you think is most important? So why investors should actually invest in Xiggit?
Yeah, so I think as I think and I look at what we've done in the past, the retirement product that we've got and the savings product that we've got expands to a large swath of people, right? And so there's a whole group of people that can use that. There isn't really anybody that is focusing on this gig market right now. A lot of states have mandates in place where the gig companies have to provide stipends to their employees to be able to pay for things like healthcare and retirement and stuff like that. I don't know how well those workers are spending that stipend. So how can, especially when you talk about an investor, how can you help us build relationships with some of those gig companies to help offer Xiggit as an option to help with that stipend, to help make sure that that worker is set up with whatever they need to be financially successful in their life. And then I think especially on the gig worker side, like I said, there is nobody that's really doing a single product. So definitely come in and join us and help build that product out, and build something that those gig workers really love, because there's millions of gig workers out there, and there's only going to be more over time. And people being able to look at supplementing their income with additional work, right? They may have multiple gig jobs that they're working, no retirement, no savings. And then all of a sudden they're going to get to retirement and they're going to be like, what do I do? Right. And so come and help build Xiggit. We've been kicking this around for a couple of years now. And we finally started getting some of this personal payroll stuff, like literally our first release, I think it's going to be next week. And that's after about a week and a half of development on just that first chunk. So we can iterate on it pretty quickly. It's if you believe in the mission, come and help us build it out. And I think we'll all be successful together.
So Michael, you are 2 years into your journey as entrepreneur, as technology co-founder, and I'm sure there are a couple of major lessons learned already done during this journey. So it's interesting to know, what's your biggest insight during these 2 years of being a startup founder as a technology leader?
In order to be successful at this, you need to be prepared to fail. I think is the biggest thing that I've come to realize. You're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. You need to be prepared to throw a bunch of spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks, and analyze it quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just put it out there, see if it works. If it doesn't, give it a week, monitor it closely. Give it a week or two. If it doesn't work, then start tweaking it. If it does work, then fine, just leave it. Keep monitoring it and adjust it as you go. But you have to be able to take risks, and you have to be willing to take those risks, and you have to be able to say that you're wrong, and that was not the correct decision to make, and course correct as you go. I think that's pretty much the biggest thing that I've come to learn out of this whole process that we've gone through.
So could we say that this should be the strategy for all the fintech startups, fintech companies on the early stage, to move fast, to iterate, to deliver fast to market, to get the feedback from your clients, maybe from your partners, and actually tune your product depending on this feedback?
Yeah, and actually my favorite story that I've heard throughout this whole process, one of the accelerators, we were listening to conversation from the team at Segment. I don't know if everybody knows sort of their history. So Segment is what's called a customer data platform, allows you to basically send in a bunch of data into the system and then send it out to a bunch of different stuff, whether it's a database or Slack or another vendor to do something with or something like that. But it basically centralizes your data collection and your processing. They actually started out as a feedback tool for teachers in class. And so they went through Y Combinator, and they're like, hey, we're going to go to all these colleges, and the kids will be able to give you feedback on your lesson plan as you're talking in real time. And the teachers were all great. And so they went and deployed it, and they went and observed. And basically all these people opened up their laptops and pulled up the page to start rating the professor as they were talking. And then within about 5 minutes, they were off navigating the web and doing other stuff and completely ignoring what the professor was talking about. And so they came back, they're like, it's not enough work. That's not what we're working on. And I heard the guy was giving the speech, and I was like, and he was like, you felt really bad because they realized it wasn't going to work. So they went back to their investors and they're like, it's not going to work. But as they were doing all of this, they were ingesting all of this data. And that's how they knew that people were like not using the app. Right. And so they wound up building what was the initial version of Segment, where you basically just pass in all this data and spit it out to a bunch of different stuff. They open sourced it, and people were like, hey, we'll pay you for this. So then that was the instance of Segment. And then they got acquired by Twilio, and they're huge right now. So it is truly about trying something and seeing what's work and taking a risk and realizing, oh, you're not, but you have this thing that is valuable that came out of it. So move on with that instead and see what happens.
Yeah, so really, really nice story. Thank you. All right, Michael. So thank you very much for being with us today. So I really enjoyed this story of Xiggit and your story as a technology founder. So thank you very much.
Sure. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, and thank you for everybody who are watching us today. And do not forget to like this video if you found this interesting for yourself and useful for yourself. And subscribe to our channel to learn more about how to build great fintech products, companies, and products. And it was me, Vasil Soshuk from INSART, and Michael Blanton from Xiggit. And let's continue building the future of fintech together. And see you next time.
Still watching us and have not subscribed yet? Let's fix this. Also, don't forget to like this video and take a look at the other episodes we have. See ya!